Everly Ayers. She had the longest eyelashes I think I've ever seen, um, and her feet were so big. She had a full head of hair.
Welcome to Still a Part of Us, a place where moms and dads share the story of their child who was stillborn or who died in infancy. I'm Winter.
And I'm Lee. We are grateful you joined us today. Please note that this is a story of loss and has triggers.
Thanks to our lost parents who are willing to be vulnerable and share their children with us.
If you're listening to this podcast, just know that on our YouTube channel there are pictures and videos that are related to the stories that are being shared.
Subscribe and share it with a friend that might need it, and tell them to subscribe. Why? Because people need to know that even though our babies are no longer with us, they're still a part of us. Katy, we are so happy to have you here today and to hear the story of your sweet daughter, Everly. Thank you so much for coming on today and chatting with us.
Of course, thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. So I wanted just to really quickly kind of tell everybody that this one's kind of a special one for us because Katy, do you want to tell us about how long ago Everly was born at the time of this recording?
Yes, at the time of this recording, we are actually just shy of her first birthday.
Yeah, just like a week and a half-ish, I want to say.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
so thank you for coming on. These are always like really little tender moments for us when we are able to talk to moms who have gone through this and are still very new in their grief. So thank you so much for coming on. Katy, tell us a little bit about yourself. We're so pleased to meet you. And so tell us about who you are and what you do and what your family looks like and kind of where you're based out of.
Yeah, so we're out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My husband and I and our little dog Bentley. Everly was our first child. So we don't have any living children. I am a chemist for a paint
Woohoo!
and coatings company.
You
So
are? That is cool.
yeah, so that's what I do every day. I make paint. So
That's cool.
never boring.
Yeah.
So
I think that's awesome. I didn't know that. I did chemistry in undergraduate as well and just super loved it. And so, but mine, I went into the drug situation. So,
oh yeah, complete opposite.
yeah, complete opposite. Exactly. And what do you guys like to do in your spare time and any hobbies that you guys like to do?
Yeah, so I'm a big cook. I love to cook. We're actually getting ready to redo our kitchen and our new
Ooh,
house, so that's pretty exciting.
yeah.
And as you can see behind me, we have two classic cars, which are a pretty big hobby of my husband's, and I've kind of tagged along with that,
So fun.
since we've been together. So
Very cool. And I think Katy and I were talking a little bit beforehand, and she mentioned that this is a original Mini Cooper, that picture behind her, and I was like, "Whoa, that is so cool!" And they restored it and everything. I think that's pretty neat. So,
yeah, right-hand drive too. So
oh yeah,
with the first time I rode in that, I was terrified.
yeah, I bet, I'd be like, where do I need to put my feet and hands in?
Yeah.
And I think that's awesome. What kind are you, like a big cook? Are you cook, baker, all of the above?
I would say more so the cook side,
Mm.
less the baking side.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we
Fun.
like to do like cooking classes and wine dinners and things like that whenever we get the chance. Every
Nice.
year when we go on vacation, there's a place that does cooking classes. So we like to do that.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh man, that's our jam too. I was like, we love doing that kind of stuff. Oh, very cool. Well, thank you so much for telling us about yourself. Okay. And then tell me, were you guys planning on getting pregnant? Was this getting pregnant with Everly? Was that a surprise? Was that on your radar at all? Tell us how that progressed.
Yeah, so we were definitely planning to have her. I think had been trying for probably about 4 or 5 months. We had actually, my husband's grandmother had passed away in January
Mm.
of 2021,
Mm-hmm.
and we actually found out we were pregnant the month after.
Oh,
Yeah, so it was kind of special.
yeah.
We kind of thought, maybe she had blessed us, with our baby. Yeah, and it was, I think, came as a surprise to the rest of our family,
Oh,
um, which I wasn't expecting. I mean, must have assumed that we didn't want children,
oh,
because we don't tend to follow. We kind of go to the beat of our own drum. You know, we dated for a long time. We were engaged for a long time before we got married, and we kind of just enjoyed married life for 6 years before we even decided to start trying. So I think it was really special timing,
yeah.
the way it all happened. So,
Yeah.
and
That's,
we
oh, go ahead.
actually announced our pregnancy on Mother's Day.
Oh, you did.
Yeah,
How
so
did how
we
did that go?
had
Tell me about it.
yeah, so we had my parents and my husband's best parents over for like a morning brunch. And I made this whole big spread, and it was nice, and I don't think they were really expecting anything, but I gave our moms like a little gift, and inside was a little pair of booties,
Oh,
with a picture of her sonogram that we had at the time,
yeah.
and it said, by two hands and 2 feet, with love, and I forget exactly what it said, but our family grows. And I had them open it at the same time so that one didn't know before the other.
Yeah.
Um, and it was funny because I think they both like took a while to realize like what we were telling them.
No, read it again. Look at the
Yeah, and
picture.
then you just hear this like big shrill come out of both of their mouths, and my dad is a photographer, so he like immediately snatched it from my mom and started taking pictures, and it was really special.
Oh, that is wonderful. That's and exciting too. Like I just, telling your families is so exciting. One thing I forgot to ask: are your families then nearby where you guys are at? Then
Yes, both
okay,
of our families are nearby. Yeah.
awesome. Okay, and you guys basically grew up in the same area, like grew up there, kind of still stay there.
Yeah, that's one thing about Pittsburghers. I feel like they always stay around, or if they leave, they always come back.
They always come back.
So we never really left. So
That's great.
we're lifetimers, I
Yeah.
guess.
If you love the area, you love the area. So, okay, well, cool. And so it's nice that your family is nearby. Is that maybe would that have been like a first grandchild for them, or or something like one of the first grandchildren on their either side?
For my parents, it was their first grandchild, and for Seth's parents, it was their second.
That's still very so exciting. So, okay, everybody's really excited. So that was in Mother's Day. So that was really just a couple of months after you found out, right? That you were
Yeah,
pregnant.
so I think I was 15 weeks
Oh,
at the
okay.
time that we
Okay.
told them.
And before that, you had obviously gone in to the doctors, gotten at least a sonogram. Can you tell me how those first appointments and such were and how everything looked?
Yeah, so I mean, this being my first pregnancy, I really had no idea what to expect. I
Mhm.
know that first appointment, I think I was pretty nervous,
Oh, yeah.
just going in and getting that confirmation, that we were expecting. And I guess I was expecting, as soon as we go in, we're gonna listen to the heartbeat and everything, but it's still too early to get
Yeah.
that heartbeat. So and then they bombard you with all this testing options, like, do you want this genetic screening? Do you
Yeah.
want this? Do you want that? And you're kind of like, your head is exploding. You're like, well, I don't know. You're the doctor. Like, you tell me.
Yeah,
Kind of.
exactly.
situation. So then we decided to go ahead with like the genetic screening, which is when
Mm.
we had our first ultrasound at 12 weeks. And we first saw our baby. But everything went really smoothly. Like I was never sick. I didn't throw up one time.
Oh, nice.
I my whole pregnancy, like I had never felt better. Like I almost wish I
Oh,
was still pregnant because that's how good I felt.
dang. That's awesome. I know I was like, "Oh, that's not the way it was for me, hon." Um,
Yeah.
was Seth able to come to your appointments, or did you just don't quite know because it was still kind of in the middle of pandemic procedures at hospitals and clinics and stuff. So was he able to attend some of those
Yeah,
appointments?
so he was able to come, to all of my prenatal appointments. He never missed one. So he was there for everything.
Awesome. Okay, and then so you announced it around 15 weeks, you're feeling great, everything's looking good. And those early appointments, they're not as often. They're probably like what once a month or so, it seems like. And those how were those progressing? Did those look good as well?
Yeah, everything looked great.
Okay. And
Yeah, no worries, no signs of concern or
yeah. And you did the genetic testing at 12 weeks too. So did you guys get the information back kind of early? Did you want to find out if Everly was a girl or a boy?
no, so we did not find out.
Oh,
So
okay.
we didn't find out until she was born,
Oh,
um, if she was a
really?
boy or a girl. Yeah.
Oh,
I
that's
always said, this is one of life's only truest surprises. So I didn't wanna I didn't
you didn't want to
wanna ruin
spoil it.
it.
That's fun. Okay, so then I'm assuming you just had a running list of names and um
Not really, actually. We
oh,
didn't start talking about names until probably the last few weeks of pregnancy. I had my list,
yes.
I think that's pretty common,
yes.
um, that we think about names, a lot more than men do. So
Yeah.
when I finally, like, tried to get him to, like, "Hey, we really need to think about a name for our baby. Here's some of the things that I thought about."
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So fun. I mean, well, and I don't know. I just think of the having two lists basically of boy names and girl names. I was like,
mhm.
"Oh, that's tough." So
Yeah,
good on
and
you.
what was interesting is, for girls, like, we really only had one girl's name
Mm.
picked out. And then the boy's name, was gonna be a spur of the moment decision, so we
Oh,
we didn't decide.
you
We
just
didn't
didn't
have a decision, so I guess it was kind of meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, and then so kind of the one of the milestones that we always kind of look for is the 20-week ultrasound, which is an anatomy scan. How did that look when you guys went in for that one?
Yeah, our anatomy scan looked perfect. She behaved very well, up until I think they needed her, like, right hand or something.
Mm-hmm.
She just was hiding her right hand the whole time,
Oh,
and it's funny because when they finally got it, she was, like, holding her middle finger up, like
she was.
like, "I don't wanna show you my right hand."
Well, that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
A little
So, but
sassy there.
yeah, and I kind of had a feeling that she was a girl the whole
mm,
time, up until that 20-week anatomy scan, but then she just looked so long, like,
mm,
she would, like, stretch out, like, on the sonogram and just looked really, really long, so I
yeah.
was like, "Oh, maybe it is a boy." Both my husband and his brother are, like, super
Oh,
tall,
really?
so maybe it is a boy, I don't know,
Yeah.
but everything looked great. There were
Oh,
no signs of concern.
awesome. And you were still feeling good too.
Yeah, feeling great the whole time. I think I had 1 week where I had, like, some back pain, like, some sharp, like, back pain, like,
Mm,
sciatica type
mm.
things, but, then I immediately went and got one of those pregnancy pillows and
Oh, yeah.
problem solved.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, generally, I was like, "You're one of those pregnancy unicorn people." that They talk about, like, "Pregnancy was awesome," and okay, so you're progressing along, and everything's looking good. Did you guys end up having like baby showers? And it's always fun to talk about the celebration stuff too. So,
Yeah, we had a shower by mail
oh, you
is
did?
what we ended up doing. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was still really concerned,
Yeah.
with it being the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we were kind of used to it by that
Right.
time,
Yeah.
um, I still didn't want to, expose myself to anything that I didn't need to be exposed to kind of keep the baby safe. And I'm never was a big fan of showers and having that attention on myself.
Yeah.
So I kind of just, oh, a shower by mail, maybe that's kind of perfect for us. So
That's
that's what we did. And I actually waited like because I couldn't decide, what to do. So it wasn't until probably the end of September that we ended up sending out invitations and
so
all
fun.
we sent out little prediction cards for everybody that they could send back to us. Like, is it going to be a boy or a girl? Like, what time will
Cute.
they be born? Who are they going to look like?
Yeah.
Advice type thing. So people could still participate and feel
Yeah.
like they're celebrating her.
Yeah. Did you have so you did this I guess I'm not as familiar with the baby shower by mail. So you just kind of send invitations out, kind of have a little bit of like, oh, here's the registry, here's some fun things that you can participate in. Did you guys end up having like a little Zoom call or anything too at the end, or was it just like, oh, just whenever?
Yeah, it was just whenever, and we
Okay.
we had kind of planned like maybe after the baby was born we would do something
Yeah,
then.
okay. It's always
So
nice when you've got that you get to show off your baby. It's kind of fun.
yeah, but we had took like maternity pictures.
Mhm.
My brother-in-law's girlfriend so graciously took them for us when we were on vacation at the beach.
Oh,
So they
nice.
were really pretty. So we put those pictures like on the invitations and so people could kind of see, what I was looking like
Yeah.
pregnant and
That's awesome.
how
Yeah,
excited
because
we were.
I know it's interesting being pregnant during the pandemic because you don't like there was just not as much contact. And so some people didn't know, like when we were pregnant, no clue that we were pregnant because you just don't see people. And so there's
Yeah.
just doesn't come up. So, well, good. Okay. So you're getting to the end of your pregnancy. It's probably what, October or so. How are things looking then too? Are you going in you're going in a little bit more often, I'm assuming.
Yes, so we were going in every week at that point. We would go in, they'd listen to the heartbeat, they'd measure my belly with the tape measure
Mhm.
and kind of just double check.
Yeah. And everything was still so good and looking great. Were you
Yeah.
paying attention to any of her movements or counting kicks or anything like that? Was that something that you were asked to do or kind of
Yeah,
recommended to
so
do?
actually that's something, I mean, that's a bit of a sore point for me. I had asked my doctor, probably at the beginning of my third trimester,
Mhm.
do I need to be counting the baby's kicks regularly? Is because I'm a very worried person
Mhm.
just in general. So counting the kicks was something that kind of gave me a bit of anxiety.
Yeah.
But she was like, no, no, it's as long as the baby's moving and you're feeling them, there's nothing to be concerned about,
Yeah.
basically. So she kind of made it seem like,
It's
you
no big
know,
deal.
no big deal.
Yeah. You were I mean, but was she pretty active though? Like you felt her pretty regularly throughout?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So, okay, so then tell me how things progressed as you got along because as we're getting along to the very end, that's kind of when things don't turn out so great. So,
Right. Yeah. So I had planned to work up until, I kind of went into labor, but
yeah.
then I was thinking, I was like, oh, maybe I want to take like a week or so just to kind of relax, to kind of prepare myself,
Mhm.
I guess, get my nesting
Yeah.
mode activated. So I ended up taking, the week before her due date off of work. So I pretty much just kind of hung out, lounged in bed. I'm like, this is probably going to be the last time I'm going to be able to do this,
Yeah.
you know. Um, my dog Bentley, she was like glued to my
Oh,
side
really?
like the whole week. Yeah, she would be snuggled up to my belly next to me. If my husband went to like help me up like out of a chair, she would be really like aggressive, like marking and
Oh,
protective. So I don't know if she had sensed like
oh,
something was happening,
yeah.
um, or what. I just still think about that to this day, like how
Hmm.
protective, and like she never left my side essentially.
Wow.
Um, but I had that last appointment. It was October 29th on a Friday, my weekly appointment. We went in, she listened to the heartbeat. The heartbeat was strong, measured my belly. At that point, we were starting to talk about induction dates.
Mm-hmm.
If the baby wasn't coming, I was already 3 centimeters dilated
Oh, okay.
by that point. But she was like, I don't think you're going to need to be induced. I think this baby's going to come. But that was something, if the baby doesn't come over the weekend, we're going to schedule your induction date.
Yeah. Okay.
So that was on a Friday. And then on Saturday, again, just kind of chillax day,
Mm-hmm.
watching football games and everything. And I joke, well, I wouldn't want to say joke, but all my husband's favorite college teams were playing that day. And they were big games
Mm-hmm.
and they all lost.
Oh.
And he was like, "This is the worst day ever." Like, you
And you're
know,
like, yeah.
yeah. And so then we were, talking, when do you think this baby's gonna come and everything. He was like holding my belly, and then all of a sudden the baby like makes this like huge kick and movement, like as soon as he said that. And I was like, oh, maybe that's a sign, like they're getting ready to come, you know. And so then that was later at night, so went to bed, and I woke up that morning on the 31st, which was her due date,
Mm-hmm.
and I just had this like overwhelming sense of like doom.
Mm.
Like it's like I almost like knew that something was wrong. Um I think at that time I was having a little bit of contractions, like you
Oh,
could see like my belly moving,
yeah.
but it didn't feel like her kicks. Um, but I was like, I'm gonna have breakfast. She always moves after breakfast.
Yeah.
So I had breakfast and still nothing. And again, like I said, I was a very worried person. So I was like, oh, that's probably all in your head, everything's probably fine. We were just at the doctor's like 2 days ago.
Yeah.
So she was great then. But then I called the on-call doctor, and they told me the spiel. Oh, have a Coke, like eat something sweet, you know, and then wait like an hour or two, and if they're still not moving, come in to labor and delivery. So I'm not a big fan of Coke, so I was like, I'm not gonna drink a Coke, or
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and but I just still had this feeling like something was wrong. So we ended up going into triage.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we sat in the waiting room for a little while they like I don't know what they do, but you always have to wait.
Yep.
So then we got called back. We didn't bring any bags or anything into the
Mm-hmm.
hospital with us, because we were like, oh, they're just going to check us and then they're going to send us back home.
Yeah.
Everything's going to be fine. So the nurse went to put me on the monitor, and she was having trouble finding the heartbeat. So then she leaves the room. Somebody else comes in and tries, and they're not finding the heartbeat either. So then they leave to get a doctor. And I said to my husband, like, they're not even looking in the right place. Like, they always find the heartbeat on my right side, and
Uh-huh. Okay.
they're looking on my left side. So I'm just thinking, oh, they don't know what they're doing,
Okay. Okay.
basically. So then the doctor comes in, and she's not finding the heartbeat either. So then she left again to get like the one of those portable ultrasounds,
Mhm.
and she's putting it on, and it's not like one of the big ultrasounds where you can clearly see like where the baby is
Yeah.
and everything. It's kind of hard to make out what they're looking at. And again, she goes to leave, and I said, like, "Is everything okay?" And she was like, "I'm gonna be honest, I don't like what I'm seeing." And then she brings another doctor in, almost as like confirmation, and they just said, "I'm so sorry." And it was that point I think I just went into like complete shock. Like I don't even think tears like come down my face at that point. I couldn't believe what was happening. Like again, we were just at the doctor's, like everything was great. Like we were planning for her birth. And by this time it was like it was Halloween, it was trick or treat time. Like and then we had to call our families and to tell them what had happened. My nephew's like just going out for trick or treat and like telling that to the family was just so heartbreaking. I mean, my husband did it. I didn't do it, but and then I was just so silent. Like I didn't know what to do at that point. I mean, I could still hear the clock like on the wall just like ticking. Like it was that silent. And I just didn't know what to do. They said, "You can go home and we can schedule, what to do next." And I was like, "Well, what's next? Do you just give me a C-section?" Like, I mean, how does this baby come out? Like
Yeah.
she's dead, you know? And that's when they were like, "Oh, no, like you have to be induced. Like you have to give birth." And like hearing that is just like, how am I gonna give birth to death? Basically. Like at that point, I mean, this is gonna sound horrible, but I just wanted her out of me, you know? Like knowing that I was holding my dead baby. Like it's just unfathomable. It's just something you never think in your wildest dreams, like you're gonna have to do. So I mean, my husband, he was more so like ready to go, let's go home. And I was basically like, no, like I can't go home like this. Like I just want this to be over with, I need her out of me. Like I just can't. So we stayed the night and they ended up starting the induction, late that night.
Yeah.
And I labored, all through the night. Um
Did you ask any of your parents to come, or were they even able to
no,
come? And
no, because that point, I mean, it was, I wasn't planning on having anybody but my husband,
Mhm.
in the delivery room with me, and especially now, like I I didn't want anybody but him, basically. So
So you just ended up staying. You labored all night because they did start you on an induction, and so was there any plans for, like, how are the contractions and stuff like that? Were you starting to feel it? Like it's it's pretty intense when you get induced, so that's why I'm asking.
yeah, well, they pretty much were like, offered me an epidural right away.
Yeah.
So to be honest, I don't think I even really felt, fully felt the contractions because, I pretty much just got the epidural right away. I didn't really want to be any more in any more pain than I already was
Yeah.
emotionally. So I just I took it right away.
Yeah. Good. I think that's good. Were you and Seth, were you guys able to talk about like it's one of those things where I just remember like my husband and I, it was so hard to just find words sometimes to talk about after finding out and just being so devastated. I don't like, how are you and Seth doing while you were at the hospital by yourselves? Like, that's rough.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was pretty. I mean, we really didn't talk about it. I was trying to get as much rest as I could, as I was laboring to kind of prepare myself. Um, and I think he was just kind of still in shock as well. I mean, it's so hard to process it. And like we didn't even know what to do. I mean, we were just kind of winging it essentially.
Yeah. Did you feel like though the medical team was helping you through that? Like I know like you're saying you were kind of winging it. Yeah, and I guess you do. Like you don't ever expect to be in this situation, but were they helping you kind of go through that and what to expect? And
Yeah, I mean, my nurses were great. Um, I really regret. I feel so bad. I wish I remembered their names, but
yeah,
I can't. But she was basically, just whatever you need, essentially. And she kind of said, "We're just gonna let you go in labor up until you feel that urge, that sense that you need to push, and
yeah,
because there's no real concerns. The baby's already dead." They wanted the pushing process to be very quick and easy, so she's like, "We're just going to let the baby drop, as far as possible, and hopefully it'll be no more than 30 minutes of pushing, and you'll have your baby." I wish that was the case, but it wasn't. It was more like 3 hours of
oh,
pushing before she was born. So, yeah.
yeah. So you labored all night, and when did you start to feel like you were going to need to push then?
Yeah, so it had to have been the morning. I just remember, the nurse's shift change had
Oh,
changed.
okay.
So we had got new nurses in. So I had to wait for the new nurses, and then that's when we started to push.
Okay.
So,
But 3
but I had
hours.
no, yeah, I had no sense of time
Yeah.
at that point. I had no idea what time of day it was
Yeah.
or anything like that. It didn't even feel like 3 hours to me of pushing. I
Yeah.
don't know if I just kind of like, blacked out or what. I mean, I remember being very uncomfortable pushing, like being in a lot of like my hips really hurt
Mhm.
and a lot of pain, and like I needed to feel like I needed to be on my side to
Oh,
push. So
okay.
I pushed a lot on my side, like either side. But then they were finally like, no, like you need to go on your back, like you need to really push. So that's what I did, and then she was born, and well, I guess I should backtrack. While we're in labor, they ask you all these questions,
Yeah. Yes.
like, do you want to hold the baby? Do you want to see the baby? Do you want a memory box? Do you want to take pictures? Like, the questions just go on and on. I'm like, I shouldn't have to answer any of these questions. Like, is this real life? Is this really happening to me?
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't believe it. I mean, most of the questions were like no brainer. Like, of course, yes, I want to hold my baby. Yes, I want the pictures. Yes, I want the memory box. I want it all.
Yeah.
And it was just unbelievable. But as soon as she was born, they immediately put them on my chest. But they had asked Seth, like, do you want to tell her what it is? And he told me it's a girl, and he was like, this is our Everly. We only had one girl they picked out, and that's what she was gonna be. She was gonna be Everly. So they put her on my chest, and that's when it really hit me. All the emotion, like, just bawled, bawled my eyes out. She was so perfect. Like, in every way. And I just couldn't believe it. Like, it was just so silent in the room, but it was just unbelievable. But then, there were issues. My placenta wouldn't deliver.
Oh,
So, as I'm holding her, they're like pushing on my belly and like, trying to get the placenta out, and they ended up having to like extract it manually,
oh,
and doing all this, while I'm holding my daughter. And it was just, I guess it was a good distraction, because I was focused mostly on her as opposed to, what was happening. But yeah. And then it got to the point where like I wasn't feeling great. I was kind of lightheaded and nauseous. And
yeah.
so I told Seth, take the baby because I don't know if I can hold her. And yeah, so
Did
then there was going through that. And then I was so tired that I just started, falling asleep almost. And
Well, you had been laboring all night too, and like on top of the stress and sadness, and yeah. What time was she born?
she was born at 11:40 in the morning.
11:40. And how big was she? Because you said she
She
was
was,
real long, right?
yeah, she was 7 pounds, 15 ounces. And she was 20 and a half inches long.
Wow.
I don't know if that's really tall or not, but
I think it is. It's a lot taller than my kids were. Seth took Everly with him. Did he hold her for a little bit? Did they get her wrapped up and everything? And um
yeah, so I mean, we held her for a while just, before they really wrapped her up. And I made sure I said, can you weigh her on the scale, and everything that you would normally do, basically. And I told him to go with her and take a picture, with her on the scale and get her weight and everything, just like he normally would. He got to cut the cord. So like we tried to make it
as normal as
as
possible.
normal as possible, but I mean, how can you do that,
Yeah.
when your baby is there still, essentially. But of course, we asked right away, like, is something abnormal? Like,
Yeah.
is there a reason for this happening? And she was born with a nuchal cord, um, but they said that what likely wasn't the cause. They were
Oh,
like, "Oh,
really?
babies are born with nuchal cords all the time, and they're just fine."
Huh.
But her face was on the darker side, which I had noticed like right away, like almost like black and blue to a
Oh,
certain extent. And they had told me like, oh, that's probably just from the labor and her kind of being smushed, I guess,
yeah. Yeah.
coming through. And I was like, oh, okay. I mean, I didn't know any better.
Yeah, exactly.
um they did say her placenta was on the smaller side, but they didn't think it was small enough to cause any issue. um and they say sometimes this just happens. Babies just die, and a lot of times we don't know why. I'm like, that's like the last thing I want to hear at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, there has to be, it feels like it should have yeah,
Yeah, and
something.
I'm a scientist, so like
Exactly.
I need an answer for everything. They're like, there's you do X, Y, and Z, and this happens.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
there's a logical chain of events here,
Yeah.
and you telling me that this just happens and you don't know why. Like,
Yeah. So they really didn't think that the cord, so like for just for listeners' sake, a nuchal cord is usually, right, like the cord is around the neck, but it sounds like it was maybe kind of on the looser side, right? Like they were not worried about
yeah,
it.
they didn't say it was tight or anything like
Okay.
that. So I think that's why they were like,
Doesn't
it
make any
probably
sense that it
wasn't.
was not. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just it is hard like to hear that. You're like, we don't know. And what other things did you guys do while you had time with Everly?
Yeah, so we actually were offered a bereavement doula.
Oh, you
Um,
were.
yeah. Um, so I think at first we weren't really sure,
Mhm.
what a bereavement doula even was
Yeah.
and why we would need one or
Yeah.
what they did or anything like that. And I think we were both kind of like not sure.
Mhm.
And it was just like this, I will call it magical person, like just showed up and my husband and I were both like, "Who are you and what are you doing in here?"
Mhm.
Like kind of looking at her like with our eyes crossed almost.
Yeah.
But we're really glad um that we had her. She kind of helped support us and kind of give us ideas on how we should spend our time with Everly and just memories to make with her as much as we could. So, we tried to take every second that we could with her. We ended up spending, gosh, it was probably like maybe 3 days, 2.5 days in the hospital with her. I guess it immediately started, you know, right after Seth's parents had come down. I don't know if he told them to come down, but they also magically appeared, in the room, probably a few hours after her birth. And they had his mom had held her, for a little while.
Mhm.
And then they had left for the day. They didn't spend that much time, the day of her birth, with us. We were moving from, the labor and delivery room to
Oh.
our other room, but we had our bereavement doula, and we ended up, um, you know, dressing her and cutting her hair and doing handprints and footprints and pictures. I can't tell you how many pictures we took. It's probably over like 1,000 pictures
Good, you should have.
we had taken. The hospital has like a little courtyard. We took her for a walk outside. We picked flowers with her. Um, my husband and Everly had a father-daughter dance like in the courtyard. We had played, our wedding song and they had danced together, uh, which was really special to watch. Um, we had books. We would read to her every night. We were given, on the night you were born, we were given that book by our doula, and there was a really nice letter from another lost mom
Oh.
in there, kind of, validating what we were feeling and kind of what to expect, and kind of just really nice words of encouragement. So we read to her. Um, my parents ended up coming in the next day and spent some time. Um, and we sang, like, we got cake from the cafeteria there, and we sang happy birthday.
Oh.
Um, we even like dipped her finger in the icing and we put it all over her face, like she would have had, next week. But we knew that wasn't going to be an option. So we tried to do it then. And I had even said to my husband, "Oh, I wish our dog Bentley was here
Oh.
to meet her." And we actually asked the hospital, and they said yes.
Oh.
So his parents brought our dog in, and we had this little room, and she came in and immediately jumped up on my lap, and I'm holding Everly, and she just like went right up to her face and sniffed her and gave her some kisses.
Oh,
It was just so precious.
oh man, your hospital's awesome. Like, I think that's
Yeah, I was
awesome that they
so
did that.
glad, so glad that we were able to do that. Um, we went for a walk again in the courtyard, as our full family, with our dog Bentley and everything. And yeah, so we had like really special moments with her in the hospital. I almost like I didn't want to leave,
Yeah,
basically,
yeah,
because then that would mean that I would have to say goodbye forever, essentially. And I just didn't want to have to say goodbye. So
yeah. Never do. We never do. I think it's kind of cool that I want to point out that you guys were there for like 3 days, right? Is that what you said? 3 days with her, and that's did the hospital have a policy of how long you could keep her, or was it kind of just open ended and what you needed and felt like you needed to spend with her?
yeah, they pretty much said, as much time as you need, we'll support you. They gave us a cuddle cot. So we had that. Although I wish I would have known. I kept wrapping her up in blankets.
I know, right? It's an instinct, right?
Yeah.
You do that. You're a mom.
Yeah.
That's
So
amazing. I think that's so great. Um,
yeah, and then that night, I was like, yeah, I was kind of like, well, we can't stay here forever. I mean, we're gonna have to say goodbye at some point. So we kind of like it almost was like those 3 days were so fast and busy, like because we were trying to pack
yeah.
a lifetime basically of memories into, these few days that, it was kind of nice, when we kind of decided like, okay, we're gonna leave tonight. This is gonna be our last night. And we kind of, essentially kicked everybody out, nurses and everything. We kind of let them know like we're planning on leaving tonight, and we're going to take our final moments with her. And we asked for like another blanket, another hat, because I wanted to take everything with
Yes.
me, all the outfits, like
Yeah.
the blanket she had when she immediately was born, and everything with us. So we had, extra, because I didn't want to, I wanted to wrap her up and dress her to leave her. um so we played like nursery rhymes and sang to her as we kind of, wrapped her up and took, undressed her from the clothes she was in, and kind of really had those special, last moments, just the three of us. And, I mean, we took our time. I mean, this was probably like 3 or 4 hours long,
Yeah.
you know, getting those last pictures and everything we possibly could think of, in yeah, I mean, I think that was probably like one of the hardest moments, was leaving that hospital without her.
Yeah. Did you bring Everly to the nurses or did you leave the room? I think there's kind of a difference of like, okay, we're leaving you here. Or did you take her
Yeah,
and have
so
her?
we had our nurse. I guess it was kind of
Mm.
bit of both. Like we were gonna leave her with the nurse, but then we had so much stuff that we needed help getting out to the car.
Yeah.
So she actually ended up having to help us out to the car, and she kind of left Everly with another nurse, um, while we were doing that. But I'll never forget. She gave me the biggest hug, and held me so tight before we left the hospital. I'll never forget that. She gave me her personal number, you know, if we needed anything afterward, and she gave me a little necklace, it was like 2 hearts combined, and it's, really sweet. The nurses were great. Even the labor and delivery nurse that I had overnight, before she was born, she came back the next day,
Oh,
you know, to
yeah.
check on us
Yeah.
and to see Everly, and it was just really sweet. I don't know if other nurses would have remembered to do that. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it was really special.
I'm so sorry. You guys had, when you left the hospital, were you guys planning on doing anything special for her as in way of memorial or a funeral? Because I know that's
Yeah,
probably one of the things that they bugged you about, one of the questions they asked about while you were at the hospital, because it's so you're like, "Why do I have what am I doing here? Why am I doing this?" It's so
yeah. So we
yeah.
did have a funeral. That was one of the things I remember being in the room, with my in-laws who were like on the phone with the funeral home and everything, and I was just kind of angry because I was like, I'm trying to spend as much time with my daughter as I can. Like, I don't want to have to be thinking about burying her right now. Like, can't this wait, basically?
Yeah.
But yeah, so we had set up the appointments and everything for the next few days to plan everything out. And that's one thing that you never never expect to do. But I'll never forget pulling into our house, you know, after we left the hospital, with that empty car seat in the back, because we had the car seat in. We brought it with us, we thought, we were going to might be leaving with a baby, and my husband just looked at me and said, from here on out, like, it's you and me. Like, we have to be strong, and we have to do this together. And we just sat there and basically held each other, before we even got out of the car. But I'm so glad he did that. He said that to me, because it was just knowing that he was there to support me and I was there to support him,
You're in
and
it.
that this was going to be the hardest thing that we would ever have to go through. And we didn't want it to break us. You probably know the statistics, and it's terrifying. So, we really have tried hard, to do this together and not let it drive us apart. But yeah, the next day, after we got home, we went to the funeral home and started planning her funeral. We really wanted it to be an open casket. We wanted people to see her and how perfect she looked, and they had originally told us, like, we don't think, based on what she had looked like, we don't think it could be an open casket. And we were both like devastated,
Oh,
devastated. Um, but we had asked them, like, please, like, do everything you can to try. And I don't think they realized, like, that we had spent all this time with her, and like we knew what she looked like.
yeah.
Because when it came time, like, they let us see her, and we were like, oh, she looks great. Like,
Oh, good.
so
Yeah.
So yeah, we ended up being able to have an open casket, and I'll never forget, like, when they brought this casket into the room that day, like, I was like, "Oh my, so small." Like, I don't know what I was expecting, but I was definitely wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
I mean, but have, like, a little pillow and everything. I was just like, "Okay, well, at least she'll be comfortable."
Yeah.
Um, but it's just nothing like I ever expected to have to do in my life.
Yeah.
Mm, but we had, um, had I guess it was 2 days of visitation and a service for her, and I don't know why we decided to do 2 days, I guess because it was on a Sunday and a Monday, and we didn't think that some people would be able to come and see her on a Monday with work and everything.
Yeah.
So, we decided to do the 2 days, and I don't know why I even agreed to that because it was just so hard and exhausting, and but the funeral home probably thought we were crazy because we had so much stuff.
Oh,
Like,
really?
we brought everything. Like, we had printed out all the pictures we had with her and put
Oh,
them in frames, and I shadow boxed her little outfits that she wore and her blankets and her teddy bears and everything and everything. It was like, it's we're like, "Do you need more tables?" And we were like, "Yes."
yes, actually bring those in.
So we had, like, all this stuff, like, it was just, slideshow playing on the computer, like, everything you could imagine we had.
That is awesome.
And they were like, "Oh my god, these people." But they said yes to everything. They didn't tell us no once.
Yeah.
So we're very thankful for that. But I just remember the line of people. It was just nonstop,
Oh,
like, the whole time. And, I mean, I was exhausted. I mean, obviously, I just given birth, and my milk had started to come
oh,
in, which was, like, the
so,
worst
so.
thing ever. So, yeah, it's just, like, everything on top of everything on top of everything. But but it was nice knowing that, so many people showed up for her, and we actually the pastor who married us came down for her service and baptized her, which was really special. I don't think we would have wanted anybody else to do it.
Yeah.
And, he he speaks so well, and he was like, "Go in your nursery, cry." Like, there was gonna be crying happening in that nursery anyway, but, you know do it together, and his words were just so special, and I'll never forget them.
You had a lot of people at her funeral. I think that is a testament to your friends and family that just really wanted to support you. Was it just is it people from your church and your work and your friends and family groups and such?
Yeah, it was a mix of everything, even, like, our parents' friends. Some people I didn't even know who they were
Yeah. Yeah.
showing up, and yeah.
Did you have a little service as well then? Did that pastor speak as at that as well?
Yeah. Yeah, he did, and, my husband spoke.
Oh,
Uh,
he did. Good for him. Oh,
yeah, I mean, he put together a video, like, he worked so hard on it, but he didn't want anybody helping him with it. He wanted to do it himself, and, that was his labor of love to Everly, and, the I don't know if I'd call it a eulogy or his speech, basically. I just remember him working on it, all night. He wrote a handwritten note to her and put it in her casket. And it was just so special. we left actually a little Mini Cooper toy car, in her
In her car.
coffin
Yeah.
and a little teddy bear, and we put like a Goodnight Moon, the book, which is one that we read to her while we were in the hospital. We put it in there with her.
Is she buried kind of nearby to you guys? Cemeteries are kind of funny. They're not everywhere sometimes. So
Yeah, so I mean, it's probably about 25 to 30 minutes. I
mm,
mean, maybe, I don't really know
yeah.
actually, but Seth's parents actually had two extra burial plots. Like
Oh,
we have like
kind of
a
a
family
mm,
section,
mm-hmm.
and so they had an extra two plots that they so graciously, gave to us. So we ended up burying Everly right next to his grandmother,
Oh,
who had passed, that
in
January.
January. Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's nice. She's there with somebody then. That
yeah.
Did you end up finding out did they end up doing any additional autopsy? Like did they do an autopsy or a partial autopsy to and get
Yeah.
any sort of
So we
definitive?
did we did do an autopsy because I need to know
Yeah.
what had happened. But we really didn't they didn't give us the autopsy results until we like asked for them. It was a
Hmm.
little weird. Like I just remember going in like for my 2-week follow-up appointment. First of all, being greeted by the receptionist saying, "Oh, how's the baby?" I was like,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
not the question to be asking as I like completely break down in tears.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like we're talking to the doctor, and again, she was like kind of reviewing, like on the computer, reviewing everything, saying, all the same stuff. Her placenta was on the smaller side, but it wasn't small enough to have caused this. And, all of your blood work came back fine, like no evidence of like infection or,
Mhm.
anything else. So, a lot of times we just can never find an answer, essentially. So, I mean, we were basically left with, we don't know what caused this. And, that doesn't help me, especially because, I mean, the amount of guilt that you feel after this happens is unbearable.
It's staggering. Yeah.
I mean, I remember coming home and like, my husband just looking at me, and I just felt like so ashamed and disgraced. Like I couldn't deliver you a healthy baby. Like I took this from you and I did something to have caused this, which is, I mean, I think a lot of people feel like that, but it's just so, I mean, I still feel guilty over what happened. And I don't know if I ever will not feel guilty.
Yeah.
I mean, logically I know that I didn't do anything to have caused this, but it's so hard to like get yourself to believe that.
Mhm.
Um, but I it was probably around February or so that I was like, okay, I need to find out that there's nothing wrong with me,
Mm.
medically that may have
Right.
led to this.
Yeah.
So I started seeing, my PCP and getting checked for things, and I met with an MFM, which is when we finally actually got the autopsy report. She gave us a copy of it
Oh, okay.
where we had, I mean, obviously I don't know what any of it says really,
Yeah.
but it basically says, the cause of death remains elusive.
Mm.
So, which I didn't want to believe that. Um, so I actually had sent my placenta to a placenta pathologist at Yale,
Mhm.
um, to kind of get his insights on what may have happened.
Right.
And he came back, and and basically said, yeah, her placenta was extremely small. It was on the 0.5 percentile
For size to support a baby.
compared to her birth weight. Yeah. So it was really small. He was like, it sure was efficient for keeping her alive as long as it did. But he also saw evidence of cord compression, which
Oh,
is likely what was the final nail in the coffin. Because he thinks like at that time, her placental size, I mean, she probably would have lived if it wasn't for that cord compression.
okay.
And that's when he asked, was her face dark when she was born?
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, that nuchal cord, like if that nuchal cord got compressed, her face would have likely been dark. So it may have been the nuchal cord
Yeah.
that was the issue. I mean, I guess we'll never really know.
Yeah.
Um,
But a lot of evidence actually points that direction according to that researcher, it sounds
yeah,
like.
yeah. And some of the things that he had found agrees with the autopsy that was
Mm,
done at our hospital.
okay.
I just don't think that they think that would have been that a small placenta could be the sole cause of a stillbirth,
Mm, okay.
because I know there are some placental pathologists that don't believe that.
I'm sorry again, Katie, for your loss. And I thank you so much for telling Everly's story. I do have a couple last questions. I always like to ask about the name. How did you come up with Everly? You kind of had been holding on to that, and that was the only name on your list. And so tell me why you chose Everly and even her middle
Yeah.
name. Like,
Well, her middle name is actually my middle
oh,
name,
is it okay?
which is actually a family name. It's my mother's maiden name.
Oh,
So,
cool. Okay.
yeah. So I don't know. I just always felt like, I just pass on the
Mm-hmm.
the tradition. I don't know. And Everly, it was just a name I came across and it instantly stuck. I always thought it sounded like a name out of a fairy tale.
Oh,
I had
totally.
pictured, her birth announcements will say like happily everly after, and
Oh.
like it just stuck, and luckily my husband liked it too. I don't know what I would have done if he didn't like it. Um, but now we, instead of happily everly after, we say foreverly remembered. Um, and it's kind of our slogan for her.
Oh.
So
That's
yeah,
beautiful. I just think it's such a pretty name, and it is a very like this fairy tale-esque name. It's very
yeah.
pretty.
I just wish it was a happy ending and
Yeah.
not a sad one.
Yeah. Thank you again, Katie. My last question then is there anything else you would like to tell us about Everly or anything that you want to remember about her?
Yeah, my husband always said that she came out looking just like me, but I don't believe that because she had like such, chubby cheeks, chubby face, and like a round head. And if you look at his baby pictures, it's exactly like him. So I just wish he could see that. But I just don't want her to live in like a shadow. I want people to know her and to hear her story, and hopefully that her life will make a difference in some way, shape, or form. Even though she's not here, I just hope that her memory and her story will live on, and hopefully, save other babies if they can, or something like that. It's probably not very eloquently spoken, but
No, you always just want your babies to you want to make a difference in your life, and of course you would want that for your daughter too.
yeah.
Thank you again, Katie, for sharing Everly with us.
Thank you for letting me tell her story.
Anytime, anytime.